This video discusses how China provoked the United States to bring down China Eastern Airlines Flight 5735 with 132 on board. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. China reported that its China Eastern Airlines Boeing 737-800 passenger plane on a domestic flight number 5735 with 132 on board crashed on Monday afternoon, March 21, 2022, in the southern region of Guangxi. According to Chinese media, no survivors and only a few body parts have yet been recovered. The flight data recorder has not been recovered, though the badly damaged cockpit voice recorder has been recovered. The plane nosedives about 20,000 feet mid-flight. China released a video showing the plane nosediving almost vertically to the ground. CNBC reported, for an aircraft like China Eastern's Boeing 737-800 to crash in mid-flight is simply unprecedented, said one aviation analyst who cited the plane's excellent safety record. Let me spare you further tedious information about the details of the crash and the aircraft. The plane did not crash but was brought down by the United States for retaliation against China, bringing down a U.S. helicopter and a military Osprey, killing U.S. Marines and other personnel under contract to the U.S. Navy. Last month, on February 22, 2022, 4 civilians contracted to the U.S. Navy died after a helicopter crash on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. Then, 4 U.S. Marines were killed in an Osprey aircraft crash during a large NATO training exercise off the coast of Norway on Friday, March 18, 2022. Neither of these crashes were accidents. The helicopter and the Osprey were brought down by the Chinese. Apparently, it took some time for the US to identify that the Chinese brought down the helicopter in Hawaii. Then a suitable target to retaliate had to be selected. When the Chinese brought down the Osprey off the coast of Norway in the NATO exercise on March 18, 2022, the US acted and brought down the China Eastern Airliner with 132 on board on March 21, 2022. China and Germany got away with their activity of bringing down passenger airliners for nearly 7 months till I first exposed them in my video of January 13, 2021, titled Indonesian Sriwijaya Flight 182 and other Indonesian and Malaysian airlines were brought down by China and Germany, about their downing the Indonesian airliner on January 9, 2021. The Chinese and German purpose was to test the new weapon they had developed to bring down aircraft without shooting projectiles at them. The Chinese began their test with the March 8, 2014 downing of the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 with 239 died. The Germans began the test by downing Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 on July 17, 2014 with 298 dead. The killing spree then continued with China's downing of Lion Air of Indonesia Flight 610 on October 29, 2018 with 189 dead, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 on March 1, 2019 with 157 dead, Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 on January 8, 2020 with 176 dead, and Sriwijaya Air Domestic Flight 182 with 62 dead. Because the initial planes brought down was not discovered that the Chinese and the Germans were behind it, so they continued with their killing spree. Downing of passenger airliners stopped only after their hand in the downing of the Sriwijaya flight and other previous airliners was revealed. So far, the Chinese and the Germans had not brought down American or British aircraft directly, though US, British, Australian, and Canadian citizens had been killed in the airliners they had brought down. But they desperately wanted to see how the United States would respond in the event of a war. So they have tried to inveigle other nations to provoke a war with the United States or its ally, the Sikhs in Punjab state in India. They tried to inveigle the Ayatollah in Iran to start a war with the United States. The USA put a swift end to that attempt by killing General Soleimani. I also warned the Ayatollah Khamenei not to fall for the Chinese promise of support and that they want Iran to become a sacrificial goat to see how the United States would respond so that China and Germany can then decide whether they want to take on the United States in a world war. Apparently, the Ayatollah has paid heed to my advice. The Chinese and the Germans then gave nuclear weapons and ICBM technology to Indians allied with them, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, hoping they would use them against the Sikhs. I warned Indians that they will invite immediate retaliation from the United States. It seems Modi and those advising him have seen the light and are not willing to launch a preemptive nuclear strike against the Sikhs so that Germany and China can see how the US will respond. Then the Germans and the Chinese tried to persuade their Indian allies to murder all Punjabi Sikhs in India's military services by dispersing all 50,000 to 60,000 of them thinly throughout the 1.4 million strong Indian military. The USA warned Indians preemptively by bringing down the helicopter in which General Bipin Rawat, India's Chief of Defense Staff, was riding with his wife. All 14 aboard were killed. I then warned the Indians that we will kill more than 1 million of the best Indians in the United States and British Commonwealth nations, as well as millions more in Punjab state if they murdered Sikh servicemen. The Indians were thus dissuaded from following through with the German and Chinese inspired mad scheme. Modi and his advisors then tried to persuade other Indians from the states of Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Chhattisgarh, who were not fully allied with them, to prove their loyalty to the Modi side by murdering as many Sikhs as possible. I issued a warning to them that we will retaliate by obliterating their major cities with nuclear-tipped missiles and informed them that Modi was merely trying to make them the sacrificial goats. They too relented and did not follow through with their scheme. Thus, every German and Chinese scheme to inveigle other people to provoke a war with the United States has been frustrated. The only alternative left for them was to launch some probing incidents on their own. Downing of the US military or military contracted aircraft has been their attempt to probe the United States' reaction. Well, the United States has given a fitting reply by bringing down China Eastern Domestic Flight 5737, killing all 132 on board. Now the ball is in the Chinese and German court. What will their next move be? There are several possibilities. They could stop and not escalate the situation further, but I don't think China and Germany are going to back down. They may begin targeting US, British, and Canadian passenger airliners, which could escalate quickly into a full-scale war. I don't think the United States can accept its airliners being brought down without retaliating. China could take some provocative actions in the South China Sea by interfering with shipping or even attacking US warships. Of course, that would escalate into a full-scale war. I will not make any predictions further except to state we are likely on the brink of the Third World War. Again, I do not set any dates, but China and Germany have been making attempts since 2014 to provoke a war against the United States and British Commonwealth nations. They have tried different strategies. I don't think they're going to stop now. Germany provoked the war going on in Ukraine by using German masqueraders who control the government in Ukraine to start the moves to locate nuclear weapons in Ukraine as well as develop biological and chemical weapons to be used against Russia. The purpose was to force Russia to attack Ukraine and then tie it down in a prolonged, dragged out war so that they are totally free to wage war against the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. That strategy has been successfully implemented, and Russia is tied down in Ukraine. Therefore, attacking US military aircraft was the next logical tactic to provoke the United States to take direct action against China and Germany. The US has done that by downing the Chinese airliner. Now, some Christian denominations as well as God's church know that God is working out a 7,000-year plan to bring salvation to all of mankind. He has allotted the first 6,000 years to man to rule himself. Those 6,000 years since the creation of Adam and Eve have already been crossed in September 2020. This means that end time events can begin at any time, and the first event is the Third World War, which Germany and China have been trying to start since 2014. Germany and China's actions also show that they are keen to start the World War. I emphasize that the words of Jesus Christ about the return of Jesus Christ to earth in Matthew 24 verses 30 to 36 take precedent over all prophetic calculations. Now, Matthew 24 verses 30 to 36 state, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." So the issue being discussed here is the return of Jesus Christ. Continuing in verse 31, "And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree, which, when his branch is yet tender, and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. Truly I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." The key here is that only God the Father knows when all these end time events concerning the Great Tribulation and the return of Jesus Christ take place. We know the sequence of events as revealed in the book of Revelation, but we do not know the exact timing of each event. However, God has brought about specific events to match his 7 annual holy days. The crucifixion and death of Jesus Christ took place on the Passover day. God's church began on the very day of Pentecost, when Holy Spirit was given to the apostles and disciples. Therefore, it is quite likely that the return of Jesus Christ may occur on the next holy day, the Feast of Trumpets, which the Jews call Rosh Hashanah. In that spirit, we speculate and do calculations when end time events could begin. Again, I am not setting any dates, because the time of beginning of events is not known to Jesus Christ or the angels, but only to God the Father. Now let me share with you some calculations I shared with one of the prophets in 2001, whom German masqueraders consult. The man is Gerald R. Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God, a church which I attended for a few months. That's when I shared my calculations with him. Gerald Flurry had written a new book in 2001 titled The Last Hour. My response was to provide some additional information about the last hour. The last hour is mentioned in 1 John chapter 2 verse 18 in the New King James Version. "Little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour." I wrote to Mr. Flurry that the last hour probably began with the death of Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong on January 16, 1986, through whom God founded the modern era of his church. In prophecy, there's a principle when one day is counted as 1,000 years, or one day is the equivalent of 1,000 years in prophecy. So I calculated that the last hour would mean 1,000 years divided by 24, which works out to 41 years and 8 months. So I wrote to Mr. Flurry that according to John's prophecy about the last hour, return of Jesus Christ would be around 21 years, 8 months from the time Mr. Armstrong died and the Laodicean era of God's church began. We have to then work backwards from the time that Jesus Christ might return to the beginning of the Third World War and other events. 41 years and 8 months from January 1986 brings us to September 2027, which could be the time of Jesus Christ's return. Working back 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation brings us to March-April 2024. Then Ezekiel 4 verse 5 indicates that Israel, meaning America and British Commonwealth nations, will be besieged 390 days, or a year and 1 month, before they are militarily defeated in a 30-day war. That brings us back to March 2023. Before the 30-day war that defeats the United States and Britain, the Third World War will be fought. That will result in famines and diseases. We are already in the year 2022. Therefore, according to these calculations, a Third World War could begin at any time, and within a year of the beginning of the war, Germany, its European and other global allies could lay a siege or trade blockade of the United States and British Commonwealth nations that will be experiencing a famine before fighting a 30-day war to defeat them. Again, let me reiterate, only God the Father knows when these events will begin, but we can speculate and do calculations based on some insightful hints given in the Bible. I believe Gerald Flurry agreed with these calculations when I shared them with him in a letter. Stay closely tuned to what is going on in world news. Germany's actions in orchestrating the conflict in Ukraine and China directly bringing down US military aircraft indicate that the Third World War may be closer than we think. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos. Some people do not have the time to go through the full length of videos. They find it more convenient to read the text of the video. Unfortunately, YouTube does not provide the facility to make the text of my videos available on YouTube. But fortunately, Facebook does provide that facility. So I make the text of my videos available on my Facebook channel or my YouTube channel, which you can then easily copy.